Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
This show is now brought to you by Miles Franklin. And when it comes to protecting your wealth, you know there's nothing better than gold and silver. That's what I'm buying. I hope you're doing the same. And once you make the decision to buy gold and silver, there's no better place than Miles Franklin. Look, they've been in business 22 years. And the reason I'm a customer is because when you buy, they ship. Go to milesfranklin.com or call them at 800-822-8080 to get a free quote. 1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. If you feel that you've been losing your freedoms, if you think that the Constitution no longer matters, well, maybe it's time to try another approach. My next guest, Yaron Brook, head of the Ayn Rand Institute for Individual Rights, has been taking his message to the people for years, and it's starting to resonate. Yaron, welcome back on the Financial Survival Network.
Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Hey, likewise. So, have you been noticing these executive orders coming down, like the one that gives the president control of literally all natural resources in the time of a national emergency, however that's defined?
This is spooky. This is this country's march towards fascism. It's a march that began, decades ago, and in slow increments they take more and more power. And unfortunately, the Bush administration was very, very strong on executive power and shifting power away from Congress towards the executive. And Obama, in spite of having criticized that, is now, of course, taking as much advantage as he can of it in order to increase his power. It is really scary. I think people should be really concerned and up in arms about it. And of course, the mainstream media says nothing about it because they're basically in cahoots with this administration and with most administrations. There's a real increase in government control over our lives and government power, and these executive orders are just one manifestation of it.
So, do you think we're becoming a nation of men and not laws, or have we already become one?
We're certainly moving in that direction. I don't know that we're quite there yet, at least not in a big chunk of the world. I mean, I still think this country is significantly free in many respects. But certainly, I mean, if you're a bondholder in GM, you're going to get screwed. If you're a bondholder in some other company, you're not. So, or if you're a stockholder of Goldman, you're going to get bailed out. But if you're a stockholder in Lehman, you're not. So there certainly already is, because of government intervention in the economy, because of government involvement, because of the subsidies, because of redistribution of wealth, because of everything, every way in which the government is involved in the economy, that means that they favor some people and they don't favor other people. And in that sense, we become more about men, more about people than we do about laws. I mean, the whole idea of the rule of law is that it doesn't matter. Everybody gets treated the same. And, you can't treat everybody the same when you're doing the kind of interventionist policies that our government is doing, because they can't afford to. They have to pick and choose losers and winners, and that's exactly when you get into this issue of lack of rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at like an MF Global situation where this money disappeared, they know exactly where it went. There's not a question. And Corzine, when he was running things, you just don't take $1.6 billion of customer money and use it to pay off losing bets of the company, and somehow the CEO doesn't know about it. And yet the word...
No, and there seem to be more and more emails that suggest that he just didn't know about it, but he was the guiding force behind it. And yet, this should be a criminal prosecution. I mean, this guy committed fraud on a massive scale. And yet it looks like, at least for now, we'll see what happens, it looks like he's getting a pass because he's a former senator, he's a former governor, he's pals with the head of the regulatory agency, he's pals with the people at the Treasury Department, and with half of Congress, and they just don't want to take down one of their own. Now, I think it's going to get to a point where they won't have any choice, and they'll have to prosecute him. But this is ridiculous. I mean, he should have been arrested weeks ago.
Yeah, and then the funds of the investors, like the people in the U.S. who invested in U.S. securities, got back 80% of their money. But the people who were investing in foreign securities have gotten back 10%, nearly nothing. And we've got all these overlapping bankruptcies. And yet there was a fraud that took place because their money wasn't where it was supposed to be. And that's the alarming thing. The too big to fails, the government intervening more and more to pick the winners and the losers. And even when they pick winners that turn out to be losers, the losers never really suffer the consequences of their actions.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think it's a little early with MF Global because I think there are going to be a lot of lawsuits, and I think this is going to be settled ultimately in courts and maybe criminal court, maybe not, we'll see. But there's no question. I mean, there's no question that the way this financial crisis is being handled has hurt legitimate contract holders and has penalized all the rest of us, penalized everybody, and has benefited a select group of people. But more than anything, it has grown the power of the government. It has grown its reach, and Dodd-Frank, we're only now starting to see kind of what those regulations are going to entail, but it is going to be a disaster in terms of the degree of regulations, the way in which it restricts the ability of the financial industry to be flexible. It's going to tie their hands, and it's going to create a too-big-to-fail mentality that's far, far greater than what we had before the financial crisis, which is just going to set us up for a much bigger collapse, in the future. So Dodd-Frank is one of the most disastrous regulatory bills. I think people don't realize how bad it's going to be, but it's going to be awful. I'm already seeing its consequences.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the prior financial regulatory schemes after the collapse of Enron, they put in Sarbanes-Oxley, and what did that do? It really hurt the little companies wanting to go public, wanting to become big companies, because it restricted them from entering the public securities markets and effectively made their only exit strategy getting taken out by a bigger company for less money. And
sure, but think about even broader than that. Okay, so it hurts the small companies who can't go public. It hurts the investment banks who now don't have a business. So remember that pre-2002, investment banks made a lot of their money from underwriting securities. Well, there's no securities to underwrite anymore, so now they have to look for a new business model, which is why they expanded so heavily into CDOs and why they expanded so heavily in turning themselves into, in a sense, hedge funds. It hurts big companies because big companies spent hundreds of billions of dollars on new accounting systems, which were mostly just a waste of time. But I know a bank in North Carolina that spent $100 million on Sarbanes-Oxley, and it's gotten nothing out of it. That is just more bureaucracy. I worked with a company up in Minnesota, a small technology company that was struggling. It was having a hard time. And it had to spend millions of dollars on, it was a public company, it had to spend millions of dollars on Sarbanes-Oxley. And then all it did was increase bureaucracy. So I remember just getting paid as an outside consultant now needed all kinds of signatures and all kinds of approvals, where before it was an easy process, somebody signed off and it was done. So what that does is reduce productivity because it increases bureaucracy and inefficiency. And if you think that happened to a small company in Minnesota, that happened to every publicly traded company in the United States. So the impact on our economy of Sarbanes-Oxley, the lost productivity, the lost efficiency, the lost value, it was estimated by one economist as $1.5 trillion, but I think it far exceeds that. It's in the kind of secondary and third level consequences, the kind of impact that Hasler talks about in Economics of One Lesson that these things have is just astronomical, and nobody, as you start digging, you discover more and more damage that Sarbanes-Oxley has done, and it, how it passed the Senate. You know what the vote was in the Senate when that bill passed?
It was pretty lopsided, if I remember.
99-0. Not a single Republican voted against it.
Mm-hmm.
And people tell me conservatives are pro freedom and pro-capitalism. Not a single Republican voted against it. So, this is the problem, is that both parties are eager to regulate us to death. And hopefully, some Republicans have woken up, but at least as of 10 years ago, nobody stood up for both small and big business, because this was devastating for the entire spectrum of American corporations. And
it also sent a lot of business to overseas stock markets that would have never gone there.
That's right. That's right. London benefited enormously. Some of the other European exchanges, and even Asia. It used to be that companies all over the world used to come and list in the United States, in the NASDAQ primarily, but even the NYC. I know a lot of Israeli companies and a lot of Scandinavian companies and lots of Asian companies. And today the U.S. is not the first preference. Indeed, some large European companies actually delisted from the U.S. exchange because they said they didn't want to deal with Sarbanes-Oxley. And what's amazing to me is we're talking about European companies. So what that means is that we actually regulate businesses from an accounting perspective, at least, and I believe from other perspectives as well, much more than Europe does. I mean, Denmark today is higher on the Economic Freedom Index than is the United States, not because of taxes, because they have much higher taxes than we do, but because of their attitude towards regulating business and because of their relatively low corporate tax. So we are killing. People are complaining about the economy not recovering. People are complaining about the lack of jobs. Well, we're killing our businesses, and the economy is business. There is no economy outside of what businesses, corporations do. That is the economy. If we kill corporate America, if we kill business, then we kill our economy, and that's why we're suffering right now. That's why this recovery is so slow. It's because all of government policy is anti-business, and as long as it's anti-business, this economy cannot recover, and we cannot benefit from what I think could be an amazing economy in the United States if we just freed up the entrepreneurial spirit that exists here.
Yeah, there's so much potential. I mean, the need for energy, and it's an interesting thing because I've been following this very closely, the whole fracking debate, the whole energy production debate. But in spite of government interference, in spite of environmentalism, rabid environmentalism not based in any fact, we're on the threshold now of being energy independent. And if there was a little government getting out of the way, perhaps a few tax incentives thrown in or a rational tax code, we'd be energy self-sufficient in a matter of 3 years or less.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big buyer into this idea of energy independence or energy self-sufficiency, because I think energy should be a global market. I think American oil companies and American gas companies should be allowed to sell what they produce here on the global market. But I think the point is that government should have no energy policy. There should be no energy department. There should be no subsidies. There should be no fines. They should get out of the energy business completely. Let the markets function in the energy space. Markets function in the energy space just as well as they do in, let's say, the technology space or the cell phone space. Let people innovate. Let people produce. There's some complex issue about property rights and who does the let's say, natural gas or the oil belong to, and how do you run a pipeline from point A to B, that maybe you need government to be involved because of the property rights implications. But even there, most of those issues have been solved by previous generations. And just let people innovate, and let's get rid of this ridiculous subsidies for windmills and for solar panels, which is just taking money out of my pocket and your pocket and the listener's pocket and throwing it away, throwing it into unproductive and nowhere. If there's a real need for solar and wind power energy, let venture capitalists fund it. If there's a real demand for it, let the market figure that out. But it is absolutely immoral and economic suicide to be subsidizing these. And let's have a free energy policy. Let's advocate for free markets in energy.
Yeah, same with education. These departments get set up and they just lock in the status quo. One final question, we'll let you go. The Ryan budget. Have you had a chance to think that one through?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Ryan budget is generally a step in the right direction in the sense that he's willing to cut something, and in a sense that he's willing to challenge the status quo and the perceptions around Medicare and Medicaid. I think in particular his idea about turning Medicare into kind of a lump sum that you give seniors is a good idea as a first step towards what I would like to see, which is the phasing out of Medicare. It's just too weak. That is, that it's all a step in the right direction, but it's a very small step in the right direction. You know, I think you have to be a lot more aggressive about the size of government. I'd like to see explicitly in there a reduction and a slow elimination of some of these regulatory agencies that all they do is hamper economic progress and hamper the freedoms, the individual freedoms of Americans. So I'd like to see it a lot more aggressive. There's actually a budget that's been proposed by 3 senators. I think it's Rand Paul, DeMint, and maybe Lee from Utah. I think those 3 in the Senate, and it's a much more aggressive budget that actually balances the budget by 2017 rather than by 2040, which is Ryan's budget. They budgeted by 2017, and they run surpluses. They can start returning the debt, which is a good thing. And they actually slash and cut and dramatically eliminate programs. I think they eliminate 4 different departments. So, I think if we're going to get behind a budget, that's the budget we should get behind. I think Paul Ryan should be commended for, taking a small step in the right direction, but he also needs to be criticized for being, in a sense, weak and taking such a small step.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, I see it as it's incrementalism, trying to roll back what's happened, a revolution in American life and in the American economy that happened incrementally, and it's just trying to roll it back incrementally. And I think that time is ticking, the clock's ticking. It's got to be done faster, and maybe the Rand Paul budget is really where we should be focusing our attention and our efforts.
I think that's right. Unfortunately, you've only got 3 senators who are going to vote for it, so it's going to be a lopsided vote against. But I think that if we can maybe bring some attention to it, particularly, I think the Tea Parties are very much interested in the Rand Paul budget. Hopefully, they can put pressure on some people to give it more prominence.
That would be great, and I hope it happens. And I know Rand Paul's going to be back at Freedom Fest again this year in Vegas in July, and you too. And
yes.
What have you got coming up event-wise for the next?
Well, I mean, I'm particularly excited this Wednesday. I'm going to be doing a debate on the role of government against a left-wing progressive, a guy named David Callahan from Demos, which is a progressive group in New York. We're going to be doing the debate in Chicago at the Hyatt, and we've got a reception that starts at 5:30, and I think the debate starts at 6:30 or 7. So I really encourage any listeners you have in the Chicago area to come. And the best way to get information about that is if people want to go to my Facebook page, just type in my name, Yaron, Y-A-R-O-N, Brook, B-R-O-O-K, and there's information about the debates right down my Facebook page. You can also go to the Ayn Rand Institute website, AYNRAND.org, and get info there. But so that debate's coming up, and I'm doing a bunch of talks all over the country in the coming weeks. So I'll be traveling quite a bit. And then Freedom Fest, where I'm on a panel with Steve Forbes and John Mackey. We're going to be talking about capitalism, so that'll be exciting. And I'll probably do 1 or 2 other things at Freedom Fest. But yeah, it's going to be a busy time from now until the summer at Freedom Fest.
Well, that's great. And I don't think this debate can be run enough times because everyone needs to be in on this debate. It's so important. We'll throw up a link to KerryLutz.com so people will be able to find it. And if you're in the Chicago area, I think you'll enjoy it. It's really enlightening. I've seen Yaron and Callahan go at it before, or another person from the Demos group. Yep. And it's really a lot of fun, and it's really enlightening and something you need to find out about. All right, Yaron, so we'll put that link up there. We'll talk to you again in a month or 2, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good.
All right.
Thanks,
be well.
Gary.